Hello, 2nd grade. Today we're going to regroup while subtracting using 3-digit numbers. We're going to build upon the skills that we've used this week for regrouping, such as turning hundreds into tens and tens into ones. Before we get started, let's take a look at how we regroup. We know that we can regroup hundreds into tens, and we can also regroup tens into ones. So take a moment to think about how many tens is in 100. How many tens is in 100? If you said or thought 10 tens, good job, you were correct. We would regroup 100 as 10 tens. Now let's do the same thing. If I had a tens block and I needed to regroup it into ones, how many would I change my tens block into? How many ones are in a tens block? And hopefully you got the same answer, 10. We can change a tens block into 10 ones. So now that we're nice and warmed up, we're going to look at two examples. In one example, you'll be regrouping the tens place, and in the other example, we'll be regrouping the ones place. When we regroup in the tens place, we need to change 100 into 10 tens. And when we regroup in the ones place, we'll need to change a 10 into 10 ones to properly solve the problem. Let's go ahead and take a look. Example 1 is 315 minus 142. 315 minus 142. So take a moment and think about whether we regroup the tens place or the ones place. Are we going to regroup the tens place or the ones place? If you haven't figured it out by now, let's go ahead and take a look at each of the digits. The first digits are 3 and a 1, meaning the 3 in the hundreds place and the 1 in the hundreds place. So I would go 3 minus 1. So we're definitely not going to regroup in the hundreds place. And the next digits we look at are the number 1 in the tens place and the 4 in the tens place. 4 is bigger than 1. Another way to say that is 1 is bigger than 4. So in order to do that, I would need to borrow or regroup from the hundreds. I would need to change my hundreds into tens. So the correct answer is we regroup in the tens place. Now that we've figured that out, let's go ahead and solve the problem. Think in your head what we were going to draw first. And hopefully you figured out that we're going to draw the number 315. And now I want you to go ahead and think about whether we can take 1 from 3, whether we can subtract 1 from 3. So in the math problem, 300 minus 100, can we do that or do we need to regroup? And 3 minus 1, we can do that, we don't need to regroup, so we simply cross out 100. Now the next problem, we have 110. Next part of the problem is we have 110, and we need to subtract 4 tens. Can you subtract 4 from 1 without regrouping? The correct answer is no, we need to regroup. Just like we said, we're going to regroup in the tens place. So that means that we need to make more tens. And how do we do that? Well, simple. We break up 100 into tens. We change our 100 into 10 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Since we're regrouping the tens place, we needed to get more tens from the hundreds place. We need to change 100 into more tens so that we would have enough to properly subtract. I cross out 4 tens, 2, 3, 4, and we're ready to go. And finally, I'm not even going to have you think about this one. It's pretty easy. 5 minus 2. We can subtract 2 if we have 5. Simply 2 lines right there, and we have our answer. Go ahead, take about 10 seconds to look at the picture and see if you can get the correct answer. Remembering that if it's crossed out, we don't count it. And let's go ahead and see what our answer would be. It would be 100, 110, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 71, 72, 73. Another way to think of that is 100, 7 tens, and 3 ones, which would be written as 100, 7 tens, 3 ones. It's the number 3 right there, so good job. All right, one more example to go, and remember, we're thinking about whether we're going to regroup in the tens place or the ones place. The tens place or the ones place. Look at those digits to figure it out. The second example is 361 minus 124. 361 minus 124. Do we regroup the tens place or the ones place? Now that you've had a moment to think about it, let's look at our mini problems by examining each of these digits. It's definitely not the hundreds place. I have 3. I need to subtract 1. I can do that. My second digits I'm looking at are the 6 and the 2, coming from the tens place, the 6, and the subtracting from the tens place also the 2. My first digit is bigger than the second digit, so I don't need to regroup right there, which means the correct answer is our ones place. I only have 1, but I'm asked to subtract 4. In order to do that, I'm going to have to take a 10 and turn it into ones. So I take a tens block and change it to a 1. Let's see how that looks in action. We have the same problem, 361 minus 124, and we know that it's the ones place that we're going to need some extra ones. And in order to do that, we're going to take from our 6 tens, and we're going to change that. Not in the number, there'll still be 361, but we're going to change the way that we draw it. So we start out by drawing it as 3 hundreds, 6 tens, and 1 1. 100, 200, 300, 310, 320, 330, 340, 350, 360, 361. What I'm going to need to do, since I need to regroup my ones place, is take one of these tens and turn it into 10 ones. And when I count it, you'll see I still have the number 361. So I add my 10 ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to the one I already started with, and let's count it, really make sure that there's 361. 100, 200, 300, 310, 320, 330, 340, 350, 351, 352, 353, 354, 355, 356, 357, 358, 359, 360, 361. Regrouping does not mean changing the number, it just means drawing it differently and thinking of it differently. So now that we have our 361 in that different regrouped form, we can subtract 100. I can subtract 2 tens. Noticing that this one didn't count, I didn't subtract it. This cross out doesn't mean subtract, it means regroup. So I cross out 2 for my 2 tens that are gone. And then we finally cross out 4 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Something we could not have done without regrouping. And as I look here, I see I still have 1 200. I've got 1, 2, 3 in the tens place. So I could think of that as either 3 tens or the number 30. Both are correct. And I finally finished with my ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 hundreds, 3 tens, 7 ones is the same number as 237. I'll count it one last time to really make sure. 100, 200, 210, 220, 230, 231, 232, 233, 234, 235, 236, 237. So, very, very good job today. Next week, we'll practice regrouping within 1000, which is that 3-digit number again. We'll add a tiny little twist to it that will start with the number 1000, but otherwise we're going to do the same thing, which is regrouping our tens and our ones. And the twist will be that we'll add our hundreds. How do we regroup a hundreds into tens, and how do we group 1000 into hundreds even? So keep up the good work, and I'll see you next week.